Welcome to Trending in Education. This is Mike Palmer. I love having people back on the show. I love having filmmakers and creators on the show. We have both those things happening right now. And on top of it all, we have a couple rejoining us here. I'm rejoined today by Jaye and Adam Fenderson. Welcome back to Trending in Ed.
Thanks so much for having us. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a while, but that's the great thing about these types of formats. Like, it feels like we're still kicking it, just like back in the day.
Still kicking it.
And when you were first on, it was your film Unlikely, which was great. And it talked about some of the challenges around higher ed admissions, and you're still operating in that space. And now there's something dropping like it's hot. Very hot. It's on PBS. It's called The Class. We're going to be talking about that. And in the middle, there's been other related programming all under the banner of Three Frame Media, which will include a link to Three Frame in the show notes. It's been a while since you're on the show. So can you begin just with an abbreviated backstory around who you are and what you do? Although I just gave a super abbreviated version.
For sure.
We are a married couple and we are documentary filmmakers. I've been working in education docs for a while. We do a lot of stuff, but education docs has kind of been our bread and butter and like I think a deep passion of ours to tell the stories of equality in education and the importance of especially higher education and making sure that every student has equal opportunity to do whatever they want to do after high school, know all the options that are there. And so right now we have a new documentary series that's coming out, but we've been working in this for a while, and Unlikely was a feature film that we did a few years ago.
Yeah. Actually coming out 20 years after the very first education television show that I produced called The Scholar, which is kind of wild to think about. That came out in 2005, and it followed 10 high school seniors who are vying for a full ride college scholarship. And I think that Adam and I were dating at the time when that's
the first one.
Yeah, not right now. No, now we're fully hitched. But we were working in television, and we just saw that there aren't enough narratives celebrating higher education. And I think with my personal background and experience as a low-income student in higher ed, I felt like there was an opportunity to sort of open the aperture and tell more of these stories. So we've spent the majority of our career trying to figure out new ways to tell narratives about students and their journeys to and through higher education, and also unpacking some of the problems.
Student voice is a theme, a trend that comes up a lot. Teacher voice increasingly in The Class. One of your main protagonists is really an advisor who's helping kids through a difficult time. And then also the time frame we're talking about, this is heading into the class of 2021's graduation.
You're probably 2021 will be.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Now it all makes sense.
Why are you so sporty today?
Exactly. But it was a real, it's the whole It Takes a Village and sort of the unsung heroes of, making that successful journey into a successful path through higher ed is something that's, not easy, unfortunately. It comes across in a very personal way. The last thing, and I'll get it back to you guys, is this did remind me of one of my all-time favorite documentaries, which is Hoop Dreams. It's like the same thing where it's like you think about something in the abstract, but you don't really get to know it as intimately. And then the fact that you're following these kids week after week, that's a series of 6-hour-long episodes.
Longer than Hoop Dreams, which is hard. I mean, that's like a 4-hour.
It is true.
This is 6 hours.
But also, it's dropping on PBS now. It's out. Episodes are out. It may be live where you are, and then they're all streaming on the PBS app. I hear it pairs beautifully with White Lotus.
Yes.
And perfectly.
Exactly.
In your queue, when you get on your smart TV, you type in White Lotus, then also right after that, type in The Class and watch it.
Yeah.
Because you want to work all sides of your brain.
Let it cleanse.
Little educational purity or your indulgent prestige TV. No joke, like your level of reach here is pretty big, and some of the partners, the fact that you're on PBS, how did that all come together?
It starts back. So we originally came up with this idea pre-pandemic. We were talking to Nicole Hurd, who was then the executive director of the College Advising Corps. and she was the founder and is the founder. And we're talking about some of the other projects that we had done and possibly doing something work with her, filming one of her advisors. She has 800 advisors across the US, serving students in predominantly low-income communities.
Cool.
And we were like, hey, it'd be interesting to follow one of your advisors and the work that they're doing for a short film or maybe a feature film. We really didn't know. And then the pandemic hit. So that was, March of 2020 when that happened.
Yeah.
5 years ago, which is kind of crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So 5 years ago that happened, and we were talking to her again, and she was like, man, the stories are just deeper now because so many of these students are, struggling with online learning and trying to figure out how they're going to get through the end of this year. And then our juniors are going to be dealing with this next year. What is that going to look like when they come back to school?
Right.
We thought, hey, that's a great story. What is it going to look like when they come back to school? So we worked with her to interview a bunch of different advisors all over the US. And this is like the summer of 2020. Yeah, summer of 2020. And
all over Zoom, we were doing that.
Right. Yeah.
but we were kind of all assuming that like in the fall of 2020, they were all going to be back in class.
Right.
And so we were interviewing these advisors. We're based in Los Angeles area, and we were looking more in LA, and especially as the summer went on, more in LA and in California area so that we could drive there if we didn't have to get on an airplane.
Yeah.
That looked like.
Yeah.
Right.
And we met Mr. Cam, and he was incredible.
Yeah. And as you're casting, I mean, most of the time when we are casting documentaries, we are meeting with people in person. And so it really is a testament to Mr. Cam and just his character and personality that he just leapt off the screen in Zoom. And we didn't meet him in person before the first day of filming.
Yeah.
And so, and I think what's great, because
and everything changed. And that's when everything changed. I mean, we met him the first day in person. We're like, this is amazing. We're going to do some short film with you or maybe a feature or whatever. And then they were like, oh, we're not going back to school. That first day of filming, we met the principal. We're not going to school.
Yeah.
Probably in October, we're going to reevaluate. And if you can remember 5 years ago, this is what the whole entire country was doing.
Right. Yeah.
For rules in different counties and states.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we kind of panicked because the whole premise was we are going to follow an advisor, a year in the life doing and really illuminate, what is College Advising Corps? How is this from?
Because it was kind of like a crisis pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
And there was enough story and drama and trauma for good narrative, good documentary film. And then lo and behold, it went Zoom and everything went sideways.
Yeah. So we called Nicole that after we met and we're like, so
do you want us to keep filming?
Do you want us to keep filming? Because this is not going to look like a typical year in the life of an advisor.
Right.
Be on campus right away. And
like,
yes, I'll be back on campus. Let's film.
Yeah.
And we started meeting some of his students.
But she really encouraged us to continue and said, this is important. We need to capture this moment because it's a time capsule. And hopefully we never go through this again. But I think there are lessons to be learned from what we did go through. And we have a documentation of it.
And fast forward, so we met David Diggs because David was on the board of College Advising Corps, and Nicole introduced us to him. He got really excited about the project.
He's from the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he loved the East Bay story.
So we were cutting, when you start a project and you're trying to raise funding for it, typically you cut a sizzle, right? So it's like a little bit of the footage that you shot. And so we were working with an editor and we found this song of David's called Nighttime. And the lyrics of it part of it goes, I wear this mask on my face all day. And he wrote this in 2013. Oh my gosh, we got to put this into the sizzle. So we sent it to him and a little bit of an homage, and he loved it. And now that song's the main title theme of the whole series. So if you watch the show, we're really excited about how that all came together.
After we stopped filming, we thought, and talking to David's team, they were like, this is going to go on Netflix or HBO. This is incredible. Like the way it looks, everything about it felt very high end and that. Really excited about that. And by the time we were pitching it in 2021, we wanted to talk about the pandemic.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to say, hey, no shows about the pandemic. No more TV about, people in masks, none of that.
Right.
And so it sat on the shelf for 2+ years before PBS saw it. And they said, hey, we want to do this. We'll help you, we'll give you the support of distribution. You go raise the money. So we went back out to our funders, all these wonderful funders in higher ed. And
we have this story.
Yeah, and now we have the story. We just got to finish it. And
well, you had the story, and you also had PBS and David on board, right? So that's a bus that folks might want to hop on.
So we didn't expect it to come out at the 5-year anniversary of COVID.
Yeah.
We really thought it was going to come out a lot earlier. And so, but it's
and then we also
kind of
didn't
incredible.
expect it to come out the same week that an executive order would be signed to dismantle the Department of Higher Ed. So
or PBS.
Yeah, or PBS. And I also my alma mater is Columbia University, and so that same week, you get the federal cut. So I was like, wow, crosshairs.
Right. Well, and just to share a little on my side, you know, I'm a New College of Florida alum, so they've been pretty much under attack by the DeSantis administration since January of 2023. So we got like a sneak peek at the assault that we've been seeing lately. And then that started a podcast called the Palm Court Podcast about New College alums and being true to our history over there. And then talk about kindred spirits. I am the proud owner of the domain pandemoir.com. Nothing's going on there right now, but I'm right there with you in that.
Is that going to be a blog of your Pandemoir?
I need to do it now that I've said it out loud and y'all have provoked me. I think the time might be right.
I'm going to start checking in every day now.
Because
your Pandemoir.
It's always going to be too soon, but we actually do need to talk about this stuff. And I was even thinking about, you know, the Spanish flu, which was a much bigger deal than we're permitted to think about because nobody really did a good job covering it because it was, you know, 1918, 1919, and everybody's so shook that they just wanted to go away. They wanted to be erased. And that's why documenting this stuff in real time when it's happening is such an important cultural history, especially because erasure is a thing, aside from a great 80s fad, erasure is a thing I couldn't resist. That happens, you know, in some ways it speaks to the importance of the type of work that you're doing because, you know, the stories that are told frequently are not the ones that you guys are documenting.
I 100% agree with you. Yeah. I think different than like the Spanish flu, we were inundated with information about COVID.
Yes.
For, you know, over a year. Yeah. And that was the only thing that we talked about. The only thing that you saw on TV, the only thing that and after that, it slowly went away and then it was silent, which I think everybody needed.
Yeah.
But it's time to talk about it. And I think now, especially every now and then something pops up where studies show that this is like really bad for the kids that went through this, or it's really bad that every kid got a device, and like, oh, it's really bad that we had these things, and it really hurt the film industry and these things, but we're not really talking about this at hey, how can we support people with what they went through? Really focus on that. And I hope that the series that we have, the class, and the conversations that we're having with people like yourself can spark that conversation and can have people say, hey, let's take a moment and not just talk about college advising. Let's talk about code.
Right.
I mean, you see this with any traumatic event that people go through. There is a time to process that and heal. And there's this book that I read while we were filming this series. It came out just a little bit after, by George Bonanno at Columbia University. And it's called The End of Trauma. And it talks about how the difference between post-traumatic growth and post-traumatic syndromes. And the difference between those two is if you're processing your trauma with community. Yeah. And I think that the gift that we have of the pandemic is that there is a universal experience that we lived through as a community. But I think in order to heal from that and process, we need to process that as a community. We need to talk about it in a healthy way.
It reminds me of just kind of a lot of the research on stress and weathering is that like you need time and a safe place to kind of like recover. And I feel like I was just talking to someone about this, like there was that sort of spike in grace that happened where everybody's like, remember grace, like we got, and like empathy. And then I think we kind of exhausted our grace and empathy reserves. And then we really haven't had a time to build them back up. And instead we're almost being told to hate and fear.
Yes.
And that's why I think it's important to kind of remind us of kind of that journey that we went through and how it's actually not a sprint. It is a marathon. And like grace and empathy. I was just talking to a neuroscientist who was saying like our brains have adapted, this is the anxious generation and social media and all that stuff, to have less focus and less empathy. And dealing with that reality means we have to give people more time and we have to do a better job kind of modeling what it means to be gracious, what it means to have empathy. And it sounds like you found a protagonist in Mr. Cam. You had a front row seat to that. And then for the kids you were covering, like, it's hard anyway.
Yeah.
So how do you tease that out where like some of the story is about the pandemic, but then it's still trying to figure out your future self, your pathway? How do you believe in yourself enough? Which colleges do you want to apply to? Do you get in? I guess it's all of that,
I think we had like a challenge to do this. So when we first pitched this to studios or to streamers and people, there was this push. They said, hey, can you basically tell it without talking about COVID?
Right.
So we cut this first episode. Episode, we basically didn't talk about COVID, and we tried to cut away from masks. All these kids just sitting on their computers on Zoom. And we were like, there's this huge elephant in the room that we're not talking about. Hey, by the way, I'm not at school. And so when we came back to it years later with PBS, we like looked at it again and told the story of COVID. And you really like in the first 10 minutes, 12 minutes of that first episode, you really see, this is what happened. Let's set up where we are. Let's set up the world that we're living in. And this is when COVID, because we started filming in August. And so this was, COVID had happened in March, and then down to now we're in school and we're not in class.
Right.
And then that launches us, that sets the world. And then we're allowed to tell the stories of people, right?
Yeah.
So it's 6 episodes.
Yeah.
Talk about COVID because that's what we're living in. But that is not, we're not just beating you over the head with what happened with COVID. This is stories of 6 incredible students and their like amazing college advisor who was more than just a college advisor. He was a mental health support, and he was a friend and a mentor. And he really carried them through this pandemic year.
Yeah.
Helped them figure out what they wanted to do in the future. And so but we dove deep, and that's why it's 6 episodes, 6 1-hour episodes of these incredible students' lives. And you really get to know them. We were filming at their house. We had a camera, one person's house, while we were at Mr. Cam's house with another camera, so that you these conversations over Zoom. Yeah. Really, it looked like they were right there talking to each other.
And I would say, I love what you said about grace and empathy. Those are the things that are missing, because I think that you experience empathy when you sit with someone, when you sit across the room. So this is in college. Why is liberal arts education so great? It's because, I'm going to get into this.
Let's go.
You sit in a class with other students and you look them in the eye and you have a discourse, and you actually are able to have a conversation like we're doing right now, right? You're listening to one another and you're seeing the humanity, and you may have differences, but there's empathy and understanding for the person across the room for you. And I think storytelling is a really powerful way to empathize with people. And it starts with characters. We have an inciting incident, which you're like, ooh, what's going to happen? But throughout the series, you are seeing, how does that pressure, how do these moments change the character? And as I'm watching, I'm identifying and empathizing with their journey. And so I think, because we live in an age that is very much dictated by social media, short form content, these like little tiny like moments, we don't have a lot of opportunities to sit with people and hear their experience, unless it's White Lotus. And then you're like, oh,
then I'm sitting on the edge of my seat.
But I think we need more authentic human stories and ways to engage with one another that, help build those empathy muscles.
Yeah. And in terms of Mr. Cam and the 6 folks you followed, you're staying in touch with them. That's always, I'm curious about the longitudinal, because like you got the opportunity to kind of like revisit and, there's a spoiler. Okay. That was onto something good.
The episode's going to drop like they're hot every single week.
Every week. We will say that the 2 episodes are out. You meet Mr. Cam, you meet some of the students, and you see all the students. And then over the course of the first 3 episodes. Jump in now, binge the first 2, and
Yeah.
got the third one. But you really get to know the 6 students and Mr. Cam
Yeah.
through the first few episodes, and then you kind of see their journey throughout the whole 6. And yes, we are still in touch with the students. I will not give any spoilers because we really do want people to watch and tune in every week.
Yeah.
But we have been in touch with them, all of them, and Mr. Cam. We were at the premiere last 2 weekends ago.
Yeah.
2 weekends up in Oakland with David Diggs and Nicole Hurd and
Nice.
some of our amazing funders. And it was this incredible moment. We're working with KQED up at the PBS station up in the Bay Area. And they helped us put together this incredible screening with, the red carpet that all the students got to come out and take pictures on the red carpet. There was like a huge theater there in Oakland that was packed house. It was really wonderful. And it kind of, Jay's been saying, it felt like everybody got dressed up, and it felt like the prom that these students kind of didn't get to have.
Yeah.
And they all came looking really good too. It was great to do that.
Yeah, it does seem like you kind of need those like ceremonies of healing, almost of completion. There's a lot of like sort of loose ends that are kind of left around COVID. So the name of the series is The Class. It's airing on PBS streaming now. Check your local listings to see what's going on. And while I have you here, I'd be curious more just around the documentary maybe you were intending to do originally, which was more about advising, because that's another topic. Like higher ed is certainly a turbulent space to be operating in, and it's really hard to figure out like the process. AI came in on the application essay, and then grades are optional. SATs are in, grades are probably optional too, depending on where you're applying. But what about that story? I'm sure you learned a lot about that in the process, and then also like, where are we now? Because it's been a while since 2020. Just thoughts on kind of the needs there, because like I guess every kid doesn't have a Mr. Cam.
That's exactly the problem.
That's exactly the problem. And so we did a documentary. Our very first feature doc was called First Generation. We followed 4 high school seniors trying to be first in their families to go to college. None of them had a Mr. Cam. And it really focused on the problem and how difficult it was to get to college without a Mr. Cam. And so for the story, we really wanted to show, what is a year in the life of an advisor look like? What are they doing, and what are the results afterwards? Does it work? Does it make a difference? And it does.
That'll spoil that one.
Yeah.
Right.
Spoiler. Yes.
So with all of our storytelling, there's always an impact, right? What is the impact that we're trying to see? And so if you go to our website, which is theclassdocumentary.com, you can watch the show, but you can also take a look at the impact campaign. And our call to action is to increase the counselors, advisors, and mentors in our public schools across America. Our CAMs, which was not intentional.
Oh, look at that. It's called a backronym. When you back into an acronym, it's a backronym.
Backwards.
You got all these.
I'm trying to drop knowledge. I don't see filmmakers on all the time. I got to bring my A game. Amazing stuff. And then what's next? That's always the other thing. Like, what are you looking at? Any coals in the fire? What are you interested in doing next?
We'd love to do a lot of things. You never know what's next.
That's fair.
We would love to do another season in this in a different way, right?
Yeah.
So we love looking at, after we got through this, we went in doing a docuseries on college advising.
Yeah.
Documentary on college advising. We came out with a docuseries really about 6 students and getting through something difficult with the backbone of college advising through the whole thing.
Yeah.
We are looking at this like, look, if every student out there, if they have somebody like Mr. Cam, if they have somebody to support them, a mentor or a counselor and an advisor, then I think those stories are going to be incredible stories of hope and resilience.
Yeah.
We want to look at that in different ways, not necessarily through college advising, but possibly again.
Yeah.
We'd love to do another season. We also have a documentary series about accessibility, a woman in a wheelchair, Catherine Wolf, who's a documentary feature. Thank you. Thank you.
A feature film.
And so that we're working on right now. We have some other ideas out there as well.
It's Three Frame Media. If folks want to check out the work, it's cool that you're staying in sort of a relatively narrow focus within sort of educational universe and like stories within there. It was funny when you were talking, then made me think of another, I'm a sports documentary guy, but Last Chance U kind of reminded me almost of the same dynamic. In that case, it was more junior college athletes, but it was like the mentors and sort of like the hidden figures who were actually making sure they showed up every day and kind of provide them the human support they
That's
need.
what we were looking at it all often. Last Chance U and Cheer, there's a coach figure. It's the same idea. And like Last Chance U, yes, we care whether or not they win the game.
Right.
We're not watching it because we just love football, right?
Yes.
We love watching these stories of these students, and that's kind of what we wanted to do here. It's like, yes, we have the backbone of college advising, but it's not just about that.
Amazing. All right, that was awesome. Concluding thoughts, takeaways. The class is streaming on PBS right now. Check your local listings if you want to watch it live. Concluding thoughts, any takeaways for folks?
I would say like everybody has someone in their life that has made a difference to help you get on your journey wherever you may be. And part of what we want people to do is to remember those people and to thank them and
spread some gratefulness.
Yeah.
We want to say thank you to all the cams in our life. And actually we're going to be launching our social media team is launching something called the Thank Your Cam campaign. It's a campaign.
Who knew?
We want you. So Michael, you got to think about this. Look back, think about your life. Think about who was that person that stepped in at a hard time and stepped in and said, hey, I'm going to be there to support you. And give them a shout out. Send it out on social media. Have people talk about it. Let's go out there and say thank you to the people that have helped us.
I love it. Yeah, that's the next level. I like to quote Mr. Rogers, in a crisis, look for the helpers. I've heard futurists, talk about permacrisis now, like things are just always going to be kind of messed up. Keeping it clean for the feed. That's where you got to find the people who are doing the good work. And when it comes to films about this stuff, covering it in the media, documenting it, the Fendersons, Jaye and Adam are doing amazing work in that space. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode.
Thanks so much for having us.
And for our listeners, hopefully you enjoyed what you heard. If you did, write a review, share the podcast, do all the good things. We'll be back again soon. This is Trending in Education.